Hello everyone, Railgan here with the new multiplayer design changes. Today I want to talk a little bit about these because it has been requested by you guys that I give you my opinion on them. So we're going to start off with Terran, the new cyclone change. So right here is a nice little video where we can see the difference. Cyclone will no longer be able to move while shooting, if I got that right. The DPS gets increased by a lot, like 6 damage every 0.07 second against armored units. That's going to be a lot, and that's definitely going to take out at the very least roaches and possibly also Hydras, even though they're not armored, very quickly. I feel like the Cyclone is going to be very strong against Zerg if it stays like this. The upgrades have been nerfed, but this amount of DPS, that's still a lot of damage. It can no longer attack air, that's very good. However, Lock-on can now target air units only, so the Cyclone can still be used against Mutalisks, and it will still deal the 160 damage. The supply cost has been decreased, the health increased, it no longer requires a tech lab, so we're going to see perhaps Terrans with only reactor factories producing Hellions and the Cyclones at once. And the Cyclone lock-on damage upgrade has been removed as well. So I'm a little bit scared of the new Cyclone. Not sure what you guys think about them, but to me this sounds hella scary. Now we're going over to the next unit, the Siege Tank. The Siege Tank can no longer be lifted by the Medivacs, and the damage is increased by a lot. Mainly against armored, and Ravagers will be armored as well in the future. So right here we see the Ravagers getting absolutely destroyed, while they used to be able to pick off a couple of Siege Tanks. I think that's a dangerous change. Can make Terran a lot more turtle heavy. I don't think it's necessarily a bad change. I mean, a lot of things will change, and I'm sure Zergs will find the answer to this. Especially because the next change, right here we can see it. Liberators no longer do plus light damage, so Mutalisks will be a little bit better against Terran as well. Cyclones will no longer absolutely destroy Mutas, Liberators will no longer destroy them, and the good old Force do get a small buff, I believe. Anti-air splash gets increased by a little bit. Right here we see it. So the Force do get a small buff, the Liberators get a, in my opinion, well-deserved nerf. Quite happy about that. Up next we have the Banshee. Well, buffing Banshees, especially the Banshee speed, as they say here, they removed the fusion core requirement for the hyperflight rotors, which means speed Banshees will be much more common. I feel like as a Zerg player it can be hard to catch them. Basically you have two options, either you fungal them or you build Mutas. And Mutas used to be kind of hard to build because of the Liberators. Now that the Liberator gets a small nerf, or a pretty big nerf, I feel like the Mutalisks can come back and help against the Banshees. In the current meta game, Banshees would be ridiculously strong with this, but things will change, right? Up next, ground mode attack damage now deals plus 8 mechanical damage. That does not affect me at all as a Zerg player, but I'm quite happy about the Terran getting some ground buff. That the ground units do a little bit more damage. Mainly the Viking. Definitely looks cool. The Stalkers die really quickly. Well, not really quickly, but they do die. It's already a plus. As opposed to them not dying and the Vikings having very little damage before. I feel like the Viking actually didn't have that little damage, but it just scaled poorly, like the range, and the Viking is not really that tanky on the ground, even though it has the same stats as in the air. The Viking always felt a little bit weird to me. I hope this helps them. Next, the battle cruiser no longer has an energy bar. Now they have a cooldown on the Yamamoto cannon and the tactical jump over a minute. What did they try to achieve with this? More strategic play, using the abilities at the right time. I'm not sure about this change. Like, the battle cruiser doesn't really get used at the moment, but I feel like the battle cruiser is not necessarily a bad unit. It's just a really expensive one, and this can definitely increase their power by quite a bit. Yamamoto can fly in, Yamato cannon, excuse me, not Yamamoto. Yamato cannon and tactical jump out. Or tactical jump somewhere to a base and take out the spores with the Yamato cannon and then kill the economy there. Could be dangerous, but we will see how it plays out. Most likely Terrans will be so happy with their new siege tank that they won't use the battle cruiser at all. Then the auto turret from the Raven gets buffed again. Well, I mean, doesn't really last a long time. It's about as useful as a good old swarm host. The auto turret just doesn't last long enough, so people don't really build them. But I think it's a okay buff. The Raven it really gets underused at the moment. I hope we will see some more Raven play in the future. Up next we come to the Protoss, the Tempest. Oh boy, the Tempest. Let's have a look at this. First of all, anti-ground damage increased from 30 to 35. With no change to anti-air damage, so a little bit more damage to the ground, but the range gets nerfed heavily. The supply gets increased, thank god. 4 supply Tempests, absolutely overpowered. 6 supply Tempests, fine by me. Immediately launches a ball of energy. Let's have a look at it right here quickly. So they can now fire this ball of energy. Well, I mean, it does some damage. Quite a bit, actually. I mean, those were siege tanks, right? How much damage does it do for... It lasts 32 seconds? Kidding me? This is up 3/4 of the game. Basically, you can have this disruption sphere on the ground. Like, what does Protoss have now? The disruptor, the disruption sphere, and the psionic storm ability. Then they have the Colossus, the Archon. Does every unit now deal splash in the Protoss arsenal? What? That's insane. Like, just put these spheres on the ground and Zerg units walk in and die, right? It does more than 10 damage a second. More than 10 damage a second, like almost 15. Ah, 12. Still 2 spheres, 3 spheres, and the Ling is dead, right? Well, I mean, they did get their supply increased. I think that's definitely a strong ability. Now, so let's get a small buff. What is the point of this? They would aim to significantly improve performance versus kiting units. This change could allow Sela to sometimes be a core option. I mean, they already are, right? They already are a core option against lurkers. Warping harassment. This could often make it situational to a warping. Well, Protoss already warps in Zealots over adepts against Zerg in the late game. I think this is stupid. Why would you buff the Zealot even more? It's already a really good unit against lurkers and everything. Then the carrier, the interceptor cost reduced from 25 to 5 minerals. Now, this is a change that kind of confuses me. I feel like the carrier is in a really good place right now. Whenever a Protoss can get the carriers out, Zerg is in a position where they almost can't win. So I feel like buffing the carrier is very, very dangerous. I feel like buffing Protoss units overall is very dangerous. Like if we have a look at this, we have the Tempest buff. Okay, Tempest gets a buff and nerf. I'll have to see how the Disruption Ball ability works. I feel like it can be very, very strong in terms of anti-engagement. Like, let's keep the Zerg out. Then the Zealot, well, I mean, I guess change doesn't really make too much sense to me, but this buffing the carrier, even though people say, yeah, well, it's not really used in pro games, I feel like this can be a really dangerous buff. Interceptor cost. Player will need to focus on targeting down the carriers than more on targeting down the carriers. Well, Zerg already has no answer to interceptors. Well, what are we supposed to do? Fungal them? All we can do against carriers is build corruptors because Hydras just explode. Queens, well, technically, they tank a bit. Not really a fan of this change. But, we will see. Carrier doesn't really get used in pro games, so of course people want to buff it. Now the Dark Templar, Blink, I don't mind. 2-minute research time, 20 seconds cooldown. I feel like against, at least in the CVP matchup, this won't matter too much, because against Dark Templars you need speed overlords who can follow the Dark Templars anyways, and then you just... Dark Templars are not really a scary unit to kill, they're just hard to get to too. So if they can blink away, you just have some Lings waiting there, for example, or some Roaches, some Lings and Roaches in the main, killing them. I don't feel like it will help too much against Zerg, but I can see it being a problem in PvP and especially PvT. I don't think this change is necessarily aimed at the CVP matchup, where Dark Templars are in a pretty good place. They're pretty strong right now. They're not completely overpowered. And it costs 150, which is more than the Dark Shrine, I believe. Make of that what you wish. Now we get to the more exciting changes. Finally, the Zerg changes. Swarm Host. Increased Locust Swoop range. Please, yes. I love the Swarm Host as a unit. I hate the small range on the Locust. And I think this is the right way to go. It will allow Zerg to use the Swarm Hosts better and more aggressively. On the other hand, Swarm Host cost reduced. This is bad. This change right here is really bad. And it will get reverted. Because you cannot, like, just in terms of numbers, a Locust has about the same DPS as a Hydra, I think a little bit less now. Then, because Hydra's got their attack speed buffed and things like that. And it has less range, but I think Locust still has the same amount of HP, and it's of course slower. But in terms of DPS, a Locust is about as good as a Hydra. Now, if you buff the Swarm Host even further, then why would you build Hydras if the Locust is that strong? I mean, Hydras will also get a buff, and we will look at that soon. But I feel like you cannot make the Swarm Host that cheap. They just want us to play with the Swarm Host, but that will absolutely get reverted, because that's broken. Even though the Locusts have a long cooldown, way too good. I mean, it's basically 2 Hydralisks for the price of 1 plus 25 gas. No. And they respawn after some time. No, we don't like. Up next, the Ravager gets the armored flag. Oh boy. The horror. Boy. Like, the Ravager is in a really weird position right now where you almost need it against Protoss at the least. Because sentries are really good. You somehow have to deal with the sentries, right? They shoot their force fields down, and then you cannot fight anymore, so you need Ravagers to remove them. Then the Ravagers are pretty decent against the Blink Stalkers that come with the sentries, and also the Immortals, so it gets in this weird position where if you nerf the Ravager, then you will nerf the core army of the Zerg. Of course, things will change a lot, but right now this would be a really hard change to deal with, especially because, as we saw, the Cyclone will do a lot of damage to armored units. If you go up here once again for a second, the Cyclone will do bonus damage to armored, the Siege Tank will do bonus damage to armored, so I feel like Ravager is just getting destroyed by mech in the future. We will still have the corrosive bile ability, and the corrosive bile ability is insanely good, even though it got nerfed numerous times throughout the game. But I feel like this is a dangerous change, making the Ravager armored. We will see how it turns out. Could be wrong, could be completely fine, but I feel like Ravager will see a lot less play, which can be good for the game, because right now the Ravager is pretty dominating. So I feel like this is a hard nerf, but maybe warranted. I feel like Ravager should get their size reduced a little bit, because they're just too big. They're fucking gigantic. I mean, the Ravager is so big that disruptors and AoE in general just does so well against them, and then it's hard to position a lot of Ravagers because they will clump up and things like that. It's such a headache to play with this unit. I don't like playing with it at all. I feel like it's really hard to do. Anyways, I don't really like this change. I feel like they should remove, if you give it the armored flag, at least make it a bit smaller. Or give it some more HP so it doesn't die to disruptors in one shot or something like that, please. Anyways, up next, the Hydra change. Attack range increased from 5 to 6. Let's have a look at it right here. So they will have +1 range, and they're faster on creep. Well, I think the Hydralisk is a pretty bad unit right now. Giving it 1 more range, well, it's only 1 more range, but we all remember what happened when you gave the Immortal 1 more range. It went from one of the worst units to perhaps the strongest unit in the Protoss arsenal for a long time. Sentry Immortal says hello. And this is a dangerous change as well, right? Giving the Hydralisk more range, more movement speed on creep. Not sure what to think of this. I don't really like buffing a unit like the Hydralisk, which is just raw DPS. It's like buffing the Marine, very dangerous and can greatly affect the game. But as we saw, a lot of things will change. And at the moment, Hydralisks do feel pretty bad. You kind of build them against Protoss just because you need some form of anti-air and because you need lurkers. And the only reason why you build them against Terran is, well, nobody does it, but technically you could morph in lurkers as well. And against Zerg you only see Hydra against Mutalisks because Zerg has crap anti-air besides the Hydra. And, well, you sometimes want lurkers as well. But the Hydra is really not in a good place right now. Not sure if this will change too much. I hope it will. I think it's a dangerous change giving them +1 range, because that especially helps against force fields and things like that heavily. So it can be really good. But the Hydralisk is still like... The Hydralisk is not tanky at all. I'm not sure how it all will turn out. Up next we have the Baneling for HP. Not sure why. Let me quickly read why they do this. The Baneling is the 3rd core unit. We want to make the Baneling strong without seriously impacting how players should micro when splitting against them. We want to make the Baneling stronger without impacting how players micro when splitting against them. Stronger Baneling. Players should not micro different. Well, the Baneling doesn't get faster, right? So they make it more tanky, more beefy, but I still think that means the Terran will have to micro differently. Like, that's a really weird reason. Some really weird reasoning. I'm actually curious if the Baneling will still die to 2 shots of another Baneling. Or, like, this could also change the CVC matchup by quite a bit. I'm not 100% certain how much damage a Baneling does against non-armored against non-light units. Let me quickly read that up. Baneling Wikipedia. So a Baneling does, well, it does exactly 20 damage, but it also regenerates HP, so I'm not sure if two Banelings will still be able to kill one Baneling. But with +1 they will, so maybe we will see more +1 Banelings. I think like that's something people don't really address, right? That the Baneling will get stronger against Banelings as well in the CVC matchup. That could make that matchup even more of a bitch to play than it already is. Well, we will see. Guess we will trade 3 Banelings for 3 Banelings in the future. Unless I'm wrong. Yes, it looks really good. Against Terran at the least. Against Adepts it will help quite a bit. And Baneling is always a core unit. So this is definitely a strong buff, which I'm not sure if it's really needed, but can't say no to that, right? Now the Infestor change. We're coming to the last 2 changes. We've been going for 21 minutes, so it's a really long video. The Infestor has a collision radius while burrowed, can cast all abilities while burrowed. New ability, Deep Tunnel, 50 mana cost, can cast anywhere on the map with vision, provides an audible warning to the enemy. Well, first of all, how long does it take to cast this Deep Tunnel? They don't really specify that, right? Second of all, the audible warning is definitely needed. And I'm not sure if you will also be able to see the Deep Tunnel. I don't think they don't say that. But maybe you will just hear a then the Infestor appears somewhere. I hope it does not appear burrowed, because else that could be really broken. Then we have, well, it costs 50 mana, so let's say you have 4 Infestors with full energy, you want to get them in and out. First of all, it's energy, not mana, Blizzard, please. You want to can cast on anywhere, well, you also need vision on the area. So let's say I have an Overseer in the Terran main. I burrow my Infestors there with the Deep Tunnel. 4 Infestors, I throw out 16 infested Terrans and the Deep Tunnel back home. Is that what people will do with them? I feel like they will just I feel like that could be really good, especially in the CVC matchup. Just imagine how annoying that is. Or Deep Tunnel in with 4 Infestors, fungal, Deep Tunnel out, and an entire economy ecoline has just been destroyed by them. That's a really dangerous change. We'll see how it works. I hope it does not get removed. I think it could be really fun. But it's just as dangerous as the Dark Templar Blink ability. And last but not least, the Lord gets the nerf, -1 range. Well, I mean, Brood Lords have a lot of range. I'm not really for this nerf, but I can understand why people want to nerf late game Zerg. I'm a little bit surprised that the Ultralisk and the Adept are not getting the nerf bet. Ultras are really tanky, Adepts are, well, the Shade could use some cooldowns. I think that has already been mentioned. Maybe it will get patched before this big patch. I feel like they will... like it would not be too bad to change that a little bit. Now I'm going to go quickly over it again. Summary: Cyclone, too strong. Siege tank, tank evac gets removed, so guess it can be good. Can also be a dangerous buff, especially against Ravagers. Ravagers will be really bad against tanks in the future, I feel. Corrosive Bile will also be better, so we will have to see. Liberator nerf, maybe a little bit too much. Tank Tor buff, I think deserved. We'll see. Banshee, I don't appreciate this at all. Hyperflight rotors is already really hard to deal with. So we'll need a lot of... I just don't like this change. Viking buff, well, I think that's okay. Doesn't really affect me though. Battle Cruiser, not really a bad unit at the moment if people don't really build them. This could help them quite a bit. We'll have to see. The Tactical Chomp and Yamato Cannon available at once. Then the Raven, auto turrets, pretty good. I like the change. Raven is underutilized anyways. Tempest, I think that's dangerous. Supply good. Ground weapon range reduced is cool as well. The Disruption Sphere can be really dangerous, especially against low HP Zerg units. I don't like that at all. It also doesn't deal friendly damage. Bad. Zealot, I don't know why this needs to be buffed. Carrier, don't really understand why you need to buff the Interceptor either. Dark Templar, I think that's a cool change. Definitely like it. Like it will be healthy for the game, healthy for the TT, it costs a lot, so that's okay. Zerg, the Swarm Host, the Locust Swoop, really good. Cost reduction, really bad. Way too much. Armored Flag to Ravager, it can be really dangerous change. Not necessarily a good or a bad one though. Hydralisk, I don't really like to buff raw DPS units. Hydralisks are in a pretty bad spot right now. You only really want them for lurkers, so you will have to see. Baneling buff, not really sure this is really needed. I appreciate the buff, but well, 40 HP can be. We'll have to see how it plays out in the CVC matchup. It will help against Adepts a little bit, and of course versus Bio. Baneling Muta. Players will love this buff. Infestor Deep Tunnel. I think this is just fun, right? It will be fun to be used, just like the DT. Can be a little bit broken, we will have to see how players make use of it. It still will cost a lot to use the Infestors, because the unit is expensive, and the Broodlord nerf is probably well deserved. Zerg Hive Tech is pretty strong right now. Broodlords, especially against Terran and Protoss, are used a lot, not really against Zerg. We'll have to see how this plays out. They could use a little bit of a movement speed buff, but we will see. So thank you all for watching this almost half an hour long video with some StarCraft background music. I'll be back tomorrow. See you then. Until then, thank you for watching.